Ellen White, Reconsidered, a series of presentations for people who have questions about Ellen White's writings. Today our subject will be, what about the obelisk at the White's grave? I'm back. I've been working on a book for the last couple of weeks, so I've been a little bit shy on the presentations. But today we're going to have an interesting topic that was suggested by a friend of mine down in Chile. We were having a seminar this week, and the question that arose in our interview was, why is it that there is an obelisk on Ellen White's grave? Now, that shouldn't be much of a problem to most people. We see obelisks on lots of graves and in different places over time. But some have suggested that that might create a problem because it might mean that Ellen White was linked together with the Masons. Well, is that a viable idea? Let's take a look at it today. Here's the White gravesite in Battle Creek, Michigan. You can see here a couple of folks that are posed around it, so you can get some sense of the size. And you see, looking immediately back, it's marked for James White, Ellen White's husband, who died before she did in 1881. When James White died, it left a big gap in the leadership of the young Adventist church because he had borne such burdens, aged himself really, because he worked so very hard for the church. And people relied on him for his solid advice and guidance for the church and ideas that he used for leading out in the church. So when he died at age 60, it was quite a shock to the church. Some suggested that they put up a broken shaft at his gravesite to represent this great tragedy for the denomination. But Ellen White said, no, we'll never do that. We'll never put up a broken shaft for him. That suggests part of the reason why the obelisk was decided upon. It was a clean, unmarred marker that could be seen as you go into the cemetery and find their gravesite very easily. We might like to turn the marker and see what it looks like if we go to the side. Notice there that on one side it's got James's name and on the other side it's got Ellen. But is there anything else on there besides the family name? No, there's not. But if this were a Masonic gravesite, there would be some things that you would see. What you would see are some symbols like these that are classic Masonic symbols. Truth is, you don't find that on the tombstone for the Whites. No, their tombstone is simple and plain. It's really hard to imagine that people could think that Ellen White was tied up with the Masons when she wrote a number of counsels against linking with the Masons because there were activities that she didn't approve of. And in fact, when she was in Australia, there was an individual who was working with our institutions who was a Christian, but not totally committed, and he was probably more committed to his Masonic connections. And she had a vision that she was able to finally present to him. And in the course of talking to him, she made certain signs that she shouldn't have known anything about inadvertently. And what he heard from her made a deep impression on him, and he decided to leave the Masons. Now, that would seem strange if she were engaged in Masons herself. Also, it seems odd that there's really no record, no time allowed for her to engage with this group of people. Her time was always occupied. So to be a participant in something that she was working against, there's no evidence on her tombstone that it actually is Masonic. It's probably best just to conclude that that was a classic marker of the time, and it was something to call simple attention to the place where she, her husband, and her sons were buried. Well, thanks for joining us today. Just a quick note, if you're not yet subscribed, please take the time to subscribe for more answers to the questions that people raise about Ellen White and her writings.